When people talk about Destiny, a common thing that's usually brought up is that it's a dead game. This screenshot was taken 3 weeks before the final shape came out, and it's still in the top 20 most popular games on Steam, and on a Tuesday, it actually jumped to the number 5 position. I know that doesn't account for games not launched through Steam like Fortnite, but it's still a pretty good metric considering it doesn't count other systems like PlayStation, Xbox, or Samsung Smart Fridge. Another common thing that's been in the gaming community since Destiny got popular is the Destiny Killer type game. This alludes to any spacey, lootery, shootery type game that people thought would be so good no one would even think about Destiny anymore. Whenever a new one would come out, there would be a honeymoon period where everyone jumped ship only to find out it has more holes in it than the one they jumped from. Anthem, Outriders, The Division, even Borderlands and Warframe to an extent. None of them had the power to kill Destiny. The only one that did have that power was Destiny itself, because the people that hate Destiny the most are Destiny players. Going into the final shape, I wanted to keep my expectations low. Essentially, I'm going to play this DLC, do the day 1 raid, and then never play the game again. One last ride, if you will. But then, the trailers started coming out, and stuff looked really cool, and I found myself getting excited. Then, people got the DLC a week early and started spoiling everything because someone at Sony messed up, but whatever. Now, having completed the raid, the majority of what the final shape was about is over, and I'm able to paint a clearer picture on how this DLC measured up. For starters, this was the worst launch of any of their DLCs. There are usually server issues on launch, but this was easily the worst they've ever had. Come on, Bungie, we've been doing this for 10 years, surely you have figured this out by now. We had a full day of downtime leading up to the release. What was that for? All that excitement I had was immediately killed by the worst server issues we've ever experienced. It's frustrating as a player and embarrassing for Bungie that these issues still plague this game when it was supposed to be a celebration of 10 years. Anyway, enough of that, onto the actual game. The Legend campaign wasn't too difficult. It fell in line with the last 2 expansions. A lot of people are saying it's the best campaign story ever. I don't think that's quite correct. The dialogue is fantastic. The environment is the best they've ever made. But the story, just standing on the campaign alone, it was definitely good, but not as good as The Witch Queen, in my opinion. If we include the raid and the post-raid stuff, sure, this is probably the best story they've ever made. It's the first time Destiny actually made me feel something. It was an enjoyable experience, but going into it, I told myself it really had to do something special for me to want to continue playing this game. And it was pretty damn amazing for a Destiny expansion. I no longer want to look back on a yearly content drop and think that it was pretty good as far as Destiny seasons go. I just want to look back and feel like I didn't waste my time playing a mediocre game, which I've kind of felt for the past several seasons. The seasonal content has been incredibly consistent, but the quality of that content has been average, which has led to fatigue. These big expansions may be good, but I can only play the same formulaic, drawn-out seasonal content for so long. I do a thing, watch characters talk to each other, wonder if I'm going to be betrayed, and then come back next week. Even when the seasonal content is as good as The Coil, potentially the best seasonal activity ever, it doesn't matter because you already finished getting all the loot you needed months ago. There just really isn't a loot incentive anymore. Craftable weapons are great because you can get the guaranteed perfect roll on almost every meta archetype in the game, but it completely removes any excitement from the vast majority of drops. I haven't cared about new armor in years because compared to Artifice armor, even a near perfect roll is useless. Also, all of this perfect stuff that I've farmed over the years is overkill for 99% of the content in the game. We don't grind all of this gear just to run playlist strikes. Raids and dungeons are what kept me coming back to the game, but even when that content is good, it's not going to cut it when the rest of the game sucks to play. Despite the game getting the most creative updates there's ever been, and gameplay in general being the best it's ever been, it all just feels a little pointless. I no longer play the game because I want to, but because I've invested so much time into it in the past that I feel like I have to. It's a shame, because Destiny has always felt so amazing to play, but the gameplay loop has been so severely lacking for so long. The main rewards of endgame content at this point are titles and emblems, neither of which impact gameplay. I took a massive break before Final Shape, like most people, and coming back didn't feel like a chore, but I also felt as though I would have been perfectly fine not coming back at all. Really, the only reason I ended up doing so is because of friends. Because there is no chance that I would just play this game to play it on my own. The forced mass exodus that's happened from Bungie in the last year and development leads changing again leaves the game in a very shaky place. With the gaming industry in general having so many layoffs in the past couple of years, I can understand having to let some people go, but getting rid of Michael Salvatore, the longtime composer for Bungie, responsible for almost every piece of memorable music in Destiny and Halo, including the original Halo theme, is a pretty big L. Additionally, Bungie doesn't seem to have a clear direction that they want to take the game in now that they've finished the storyline that's been going on since Destiny 1 launch, instead settling for this weird episodic expansion format featuring independent stories not tied to any overarching narrative. And this storyline, which they've just finished wrapping up after a decade, is, well, it's something. If you want a complete summary, there was a short little video put out by Bife just before the Final Shape came out that you can go watch. For the Final Shape, the stakes have never been higher, except for that one time, or that other time, or that other time. But this time, for real. And it all comes to a cataclysmic conclusion in the final encounter of the final raid of the Light and Dark saga at the end of a decade of preparation and build-up, and it was incredible. Of the 18 raids made for Destiny, I think this is the best one they've ever made. It's some of the most fun I've had trying to figure out mechanics, with Verity being the most unique puzzle encounter they've ever made, and the confrontation with the Witness truly living up to the hype. While I'm not sure where Bungie is going to take the franchise in the future, we'll soon see with how the first episode develops, it seems like they're returning to the same type of seasonal content that they were doing before the Final Shape came out, which I had really hoped wasn't going to be the case. There is so much that they could do in this game. The wealth of lore goes so deep, and most of it never reaches the surface, instead residing in item descriptions, lore books, and entire YouTube channels. Before Into the Light came out, the community at large was in such a negative place, I really thought this was going to be Destiny 2's last hurrah. While I no longer think that's the case entirely with how good the Final Shape was, there are still going to be a lot of people leaving and never coming back due to this being the end of the story. After a decade of preparation by Bungie, being able to craft the story in whatever way they wanted, for what they actually showed us, it was fine. The actual driving factor behind the story for the Final Shape, the Witness, was really only relevant for the last maybe 2 missions. What I found myself caring about a lot more were the individual character experiences and their relationships, which you could argue is the story, but I'm not going to give the Final Shape all the credit for these plot lines just because it was the resolution for them. At this point, I don't really trust Bungie, because this seasonal content is so boring compared to what just came out. There was a 4-day gap between the brand new incredible raid experience and the same old season style content with a new coat of paint that I am really not interested in playing. For me, this is the end of a game that had a very big influence on what I enjoy playing. Destiny will, without a doubt, be remembered as one of the games of all time. From the environments created with breathtaking music and stunning visuals, to the snappy FPS movement and gunplay that I still haven't found an equal to. From farming that one gun over and over and over to finally getting the god roll you were searching for. From never playing PvP to never playing Gambit, from the encounters I could have lived without to the ones that I'll be thinking about for years to come. There's no other game out there like Destiny, so it might not be goodbye forever. But hey, do something like this again, and maybe, just maybe, I'll change my mind.